Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Maldonado. I'm with California City News and CaliforniaCountyNews.org, both publications of the public affairs firm Grassroots Lab. We're the largest publication dedicated to local news in California. We also have the largest and most widely read local jobs board. You can find that at CaliforniaCityNews.org/jobs. If you haven't already subscribed to our newsletter, please consider doing so. I will put a link to our publications in the chat.
Thanks, Brittany. And I'm Rob Karinke, a co-founder of California City News and California County News. Really want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you're longtime subscribers and is interested in water issues and conservation issues, thanks for joining us. If you're new to our publications, you can register to get our weekly newsletters at CaliforniaCityNews.org, CaliforniaCountyNews.org. I'm going to give it just maybe 30 seconds or a minute here because I see people still populating in the Zoom, and then we'll get going. As far as Q&A for today, there is a Q&A feature of Zoom, and I think just to adjudicate the Q&A expediently, if folks could submit their questions there, and then Brittany and I will help kind of MC and moderate those questions through our speakers. So again, just we'll give it just a 1 minute warning here, and then we'll get going. Thanks. Okay, I think we've plateaued in terms of the number of people joining, so I'm going to go ahead and get us going here. We are now recording our webinar as well, and this will be available to anyone who wants to watch it in the future. So again, Rob Karinke here on behalf of California City News and California County News, and we are here today to talk about water conservation in California, and specifically as it surrounds lawns and turf. So as we all know, for over a decade now, California has been living with a drought, sometimes called a mega drought, could be over 1,000 years in the making by some estimates. And so water conservation is an obvious focus and a goal for state, federal, and local water managers. That's led to a substantial number of rebate programs that have been established in local communities. This incentivizes replacement upgrading of all sorts of things, indoor appliances, refrigerators, toilets, dishwashers, and outdoor rebates are also an option, finding incentives to upgrade outdoor irrigation systems. But even more common is the old standby, which is turf removal. And that degreening is fine for some. It's not necessarily for everyone. Homeowners with children or pets are looking for other ways to try and achieve their conservation goals. And there may be some also unintended consequences that go along with some of that turf removal, higher ambient temperatures, less oxygen, less carbon sequestration. We'll get into some of that as well. And there are success stories with turf removal. And again, every drop counts. And if these programs reduce overall residential water use, that's great. But what about homeowners and jurisdictions that don't see that as an option? How can urban and suburban water managers reach those and say, okay, you want a green landscape, some of it, not all your existing grass, but you also want to be more water conscious. How do we do that? And so one answer, perhaps, is being rolled out in communities in Utah and Salt Lake and Provo and elsewhere. It's a program called Turf Trade, and we've got some species on that. And coupled with improvements in irrigation, there's some unique opportunities to bring the majority of homeowners into water conservation efforts and save water. So with us today to discuss this idea and some other dimensions of this, we have three really interesting guests. We're going to lead off with Dr. Kelly Kopp. She's with Utah State's University of College of Agriculture and Applied Sciences. She's also the director of the Center for Water Efficient Landscaping. Jack Carlin joins us. He's the executive director of the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance, which is the group that trials and tests various grasses to determine which species or varieties are more water efficient. And finally, it's Matt Koch with, he's the Director of Biotechnology, Genetics, and Grass Seed with the Scott's Miracle Grow Company. Matt can discuss how one of the leading businesses in lawn and garden is exploring how homeowners can keep their landscapes green and save water. So with that, Dr. Kopp, I will hand it off to you, and you'll have about 10 or 15 minutes to go through your presentation, and we'll move along.
Terrific. Thanks a lot, Rob. Let me just get this share going. Okay, can everybody see that okay? All right. I've been asked to talk about turf removal, aspects of turf removal. I will just introduce myself a little bit further because I think it's relevant to this conversation, but I have been a professor at Utah State University for 25 years. I am a turf grass specialist. This is the area that I focus on and work in, but all of that under the umbrella of landscape water conservation. And of course, we have our Center for Water Efficient Landscaping, where we conduct a great deal of research. And just to introduce that a little more as well, this center was founded in 1999. I had some very forward-thinking colleagues who worked with our state's legislature to found this center, which has a three-pronged mission, which is conducting research on landscape water use efficiency, sustainable turf grass management, really anything to do with reducing outdoor water use in the landscape. And so we conduct that research. We then provide educational programming around our findings, and we extend that information to the public primarily, but we also do an extensive amount of work with cities, municipalities, and state agencies. So our mission at its core is really to maintain the benefits and quality of life improvements that we get from landscaping while conserving water. And those two things are not mutually exclusive. They can go together, and that's a real focus of ours. So I'd like to start out by talking about functional grasses. And particularly in California, I'm sure you've heard the term non-functional turf grasses. I like to say, however, that all grasses are functional. And I hope that you'll agree with me after my presentation. But really what we're talking about here are grasses, and I'm going to use the term natural grasses here, that create a ground cover in our landscapes, whether that's our home landscape, parks, schools, etc., and they receive traffic for functional or recreational uses. So that would be a way to define function in terms of natural grass systems. However, and this is really what I'm getting at when I'm talking about functional grasses, grasses provide a lot of other, what I would call environmental services, or sometimes they're called ecosystem services. But things like producing oxygen, a frustration that I have that is the result of some of what I've seen around turf removal programs is that when grasses are described in the context of those programs, it's almost, I have to scratch my head because it's almost like folks in the water industry are talking about something that's not even a plant. But of course, they are plants. And they provide a lot of services like producing oxygen. Every plant does. They also work to sequester carbon, which is increasingly important. They work to cool the atmosphere. Rob alluded to that with his introduction. They help to keep stormwater in place and allow that water to filter through the soil, and it is cleaned in that process. So just a number of different functions that you see there in the graphics. So that's what I'm getting at when I talk about the function of grasses. It's much more than just a recreational surface. So I want to also share some more details about that. Things that I think most folks don't realize. Grasses, grasses exist all over the world, and they actually have allowed some of the world's best soils to evolve. And that's because they've got a continuous long-term ground cover that works to improve soil structure because of the rooting mechanism of grasses. It works to improve air holding capacity. water holding capacity, definitely works to prevent erosion. And, this isn't a talk about soils, but in the world, soil erosion is a huge issue. And so maintaining perennial cover on soils helps to keep them in place. They also work to enhance microbial diversity in soils, which is the definition of soil health. When we talk about soil health, what we're really talking about there is how active and abundant are soil microbes. And they also serve to host lots of insects and other animals as well. So they do provide a lot of benefits in terms of soil. They also provide a lot of benefits in terms of stormwater retention, which I did touch on when I was going over some of the ecosystem services. But certainly in our climate, where we have at times snowmelt, but also at times pretty heavy rainfall from storms, they help to retain that. They allow it to infiltrate slowly. And they also prevent debris, chemicals, sediment, and other pollutants from entering stormwater systems. And so lots of cities all over the country and the world, in fact, are dealing with pretty serious stormwater issues. And this is one way that we can help improve stormwater situations and stormwater management. And as an example, a 5,000 square foot lawn can actually capture lots and lots and lots of water and keep it in place and allow it to infiltrate. So that's another one of the benefits. I did mention oxygen production, and we want to think about quantifying that. A 5,000 square foot lawn can produce quite a bit of oxygen. It can support many, many people each day. And this is because of the extensive leaf area that exists in natural grass systems. So they're out there producing oxygen. And they're also out there helping to cool the atmosphere, like Rob said. And I hope you can see the image, but just in case you can't, I'll walk you through this. So natural grasses in the landscape, they do provide radiative shading, they provide evapotranspiration, again, just like every other plant out there, and they help to moderate temperatures. So in the image you see there, in the photographs especially, upper left, the air temperature is 94 degrees Fahrenheit. Upper right, the water temperature just adjacent is also 94 degrees Fahrenheit, the surface of the water. The grass surface in the middle left is 104 degrees. The sand surface with no plant cover is 132 degrees. And these, again, they're all adjacent in the very same area. Lower left, the asphalt is 136 degrees. And the synthetic turf lower right is 165. So when you have, take home message here is, when you have plant cover, you can get significant environmental and atmospheric cooling. And, when we're thinking about grasses around home landscapes, for example, grasses and other plant material, by improving that cooling, can actually help reduce the cooling cost in our homes, in our schools, in our businesses. So that's a really big environmental benefit, especially right now, because urban heat is something I'm hearing more and more and more about. How are we going to address the increasing amount of urban heat we have? And some folks may be thinking, well, I got an idea, let's just plant more trees, which is certainly part of the solution. But there's some research out there now indicating that that is not going to be enough. And so as a plant scientist, I'm going to say plants are the answer, and more plants are what we need, not fewer. Some of the work out there looking at Heat Island, you see some of the results there. That data is actually out of Princeton University. They have a climate group that really focuses on urban heat. And what you see there are the temperature increases between the years of 2004 and 2014 for 3 large cities in the country. So Vegas had the biggest increase in heat during that time frame, followed by Albuquerque and Denver. And so the atmospheric cooling of natural grasses in our landscapes is something that we should also be considering. In terms of carbon and carbon sequestration, something that folks don't necessarily realize is that landscapes, and biodiverse landscapes that include trees, lawns, shrubs, perennials, actually work to sequester quite a bit of carbon, and it has been studied. And in fact, maybe Matt will talk about this when we get to his portion, but some work was done, and I think it was facilitated by Scott's, to look at carbon sequestration of home landscapes. And that carbon sequestration was significant and comparable in some cases to forests. And so, even if folks are out there thinking, well, the climate change question is huge, I feel there's nothing I can do. If you have a landscape that you manage, there actually is something that you can do. And that is to maintain the plant material, because that is how the carbon gets sequestered. Plants photosynthesize, they create carbon in that process. It is stored in the plant material, which can then decompose as it falls away, as leaves fall, as clippings from the grass fall into the landscape, etc. So it then becomes fixed in the soil as soil organic carbon. And maybe this will come up in the conversation today, but that is one of the big questions that I'm coming around to with some of these turf grass removal programs. When you have had turf grass areas in place for extensive periods of time, they are sequestering quite a bit of carbon. And so what exactly is happening when we go and remove those? I think that's something we need to be thinking about as well. Something else I did just want to mention, and Rob talked about this, and Jack is certainly going to talk about it quite a bit more, but there are alternatives out there. And this is something that I think has been largely missing from the conversation. Turf grass is not just one species, it's not just one variety. We are talking about dozens and dozens of commonly used species for natural grass landscapes, and we are talking about hundreds and hundreds of different varieties within those species. So you multiply all that out and you have thousands of options. The question then becomes, what is the water use of all of those options? And can we do better? I think the answer to that question is absolutely yes, which is why we have cooperated with Jack in the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance over time to trial and identify low water use grasses. And so that's what we'll be talking about a little bit later today, the turf trade program. We do quite a bit of trialing at our research farm. You see an image there on the right. We look at all of, not all, but most, I would say, of the thousands of options out there in terms of turf grasses. As I mentioned, we collaborate with the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance, along with a number of other trialing programs in the country, as well as private companies. And we do different experiments. We apply chronic drought stress in some cases. We apply acute drought stress in others, which I think is probably the most compelling information. And that just means that when we apply acute drought stress, we simply turn off the irrigation and we watch what happens with all of these different varieties and species that we're testing to see which ones perform the best without supplemental irrigation. And I like to show this image because this is one of the trials that we have done with TWCA. And this is the species tall fescue. But what you see in all of the small frames at the bottom are different varieties of that species. And I think you can see it's very clear there are different levels of performance depending on the variety. So again, this is something that was not really addressed with turf removal, the fact that there are these vastly different water requirements. Some of those look perfect, some of those not so much, okay? And in this case, in this image, they hadn't been irrigated for 6 weeks and no natural precipitation either. So you can just see what a difference that makes. So Rob mentioned turf trade and some of the work that we're doing here in Utah with a strong partnership between our university, between the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance and Salt Lake City. This is how this program got started. But what happened was the city came to us and said, right now, most of our residents are irrigating about 35, 36 inches each growing season, and we can't have that. Our water supplies are not going to sustain that level of use. And so can you help us get to half of that? Can we cut outdoor irrigation in half? And we all put our heads together and agreed that that was absolutely possible. And to demonstrate that and to show folks what that might look like, we created a demonstration area on one of the city's property. This is an aerial image of one of the pump stations in their water system. And what we did on the site was to mow the existing turf really, really short. We used a non-selective herbicide at that point to kill it. And then we overseeded with TWCA certified low water use grasses and allowed those to establish. So I want to make a point here that we did not remove any turf. Let me rephrase that. We did not remove turf in the areas where we intended to keep it. And so what you can see now here is what it looked like before we transitioned the turf to the low water use grass and what it looked like afterwards. Now you'll notice that the overall turf grass area was reduced, and that's because the idea here was we wanted to demonstrate what a home landscape might look like if there was some transition. Because none of us is saying that we need turf grass everywhere. That's certainly not the case. What we're saying, though, is that we can have it in our landscapes, still use significantly less water, and still allow people to have that plant material, which they really want to maintain, and still feel good about what they're doing in terms of overall water conservation efforts. And so that's about everything that I wanted to share. And I'm sure that Jack will have a great deal more to share about TWCA in the process, but this is a program that has been incredibly successful here in Utah. And I think Jack's going to be sharing some of those numbers with you next. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Jack?
Oh, hey, how much fun is this?
So once again, everyone, Jack is the executive director of the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance, which does trials and testing of the kinds of grasses that Dr. Kopp was talking about, and they determine which species or varieties are more water efficient, what might be a good fit in different climates and regions. So Jack, take it away.
Oh, great. Okay, so you guys can see this. It looks okay?
You're good.
Great. So this is just an introductory slide, and really, we'll get to that here. Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance, or TWCA, is an independent 501c3 nonprofit. Our charter is really twofold. Trial and qualify drought-tolerant turf grasses through multi-year, multi-site evaluation, and then advocate for the use of those turf grass and do some outreach and end user education to help people not only be successful in establishing and maintaining their landscapes, but also successful in their conservation efforts. TWCA itself was founded by direct competitors, and our board of directors is made up of direct competitors in the turfgrass industry. It is something that is, I think, really makes us unique and sets us apart. And the fact that we are independent and that we are evaluating regardless of whose genetics they are. So TWCA is special because of our data-driven qualification. We produce replicable results. We have standardized trialing. And that gives us the confidence to say that TWCA qualified cultivars use up to 40% less water than conventional cultivars. And as I say, we've been able to quantify that, and that is something that makes this a viable conversation. To make our qualifications, we use a network of cooperators across North America. We have both private trial facilities, and primarily our cooperators are university cooperators. We use a broad geographic range to help us eliminate confounding factors like soil type or growing degree day. We use technology to standardize the physical conditions. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But what that allows us then to do is make a comparison meaningfully between all of the locations across all of the time. To help us control the environment, because invariably when we try and conduct a drought evaluation, there is rain. And so we have these shelters, rainout shelters, and it does exactly that. It's an open-sided shelter that diverts the rain away. And it allows us then to have that period of unbroken dry down. It expands our geographic range for trialing into places where we do expect summertime rain as part of the natural system. And it allows us to standardize the process. So even in those areas where we are going to get rain, so Virginia Beach or Guelph, Ontario, for instance, we're able to eliminate any of that input and maintain the integrity of the trial. Those shelters, we've built 12 of them across the United States and into Canada. It's about $300,000 to build and maintain that network of shelters. Again, it's a big commitment for us. We're a small nonprofit, but you can see again, it is a good range. When we collect our data, we use digital image analysis or DIA evaluation. There you can see a researcher has a light box. Inside of there is an array of standardized light bulbs. On top is a standard camera that TWCA receives, calibrates, and sends back out to our cooperators every year during data collection. He is going to set that box down on a research plot and take a picture and move to the next one. And our cooperators do that once a week during the period of dry down each year to allow us to then monitor the change in green cover. It allows us to collect that objective data. This is really the gateway to that. It's replicable and it's quantitative. So in the past, a lot of turf evaluation has been done through visual quality ratings, which is literally looking at it with your seeing eyes to see what you, and assigning a number value between 1 and 9, 1 being the worst, 9 being the best, and saying, that's what I think that is. Digital image analysis and turf analyzer has allowed us then to look at the plots and evaluate the green pixels in it and create an actual quantifiable measure of green cover. So our data-driven qualification is really looking at the change in green cover, percent green cover, relative to the amount of water that has been lost to evapotranspiration. And our evaluation looks specifically at the change in green cover and the loss of evapotranspiration to 25% green cover. Really, the reason we go to 25% is that's where we start to see an increased rate of mortality, and we would really advise people against going past that. And to make sense of that and create a standard comparison, TWCA qualifications have standard entries. We have drought tolerant, known, and susceptible entries. So there you can see the performance in cultivar plant factors of 1.10 for a qualified cultivar versus 1.51 in that first year in 2019 in the Albany location. And what that's telling you is that the qualified cultivar used 110% of the water that the drought tolerant standard did. So it performed within 10% of the most drought tolerant standards in the trial. Whereas SNAP, which used 151% of the water relative to the qualified cultivars. So really that gives us then a way of measuring each cultivar's performance against known drought tolerant standards. It's a very time-consuming process. Once our data has come in and it has been evaluated and analyzed, we have 4 independent reviewers that make the final qualifications based on the data from our trials. It's you can see they're all independent. Dr. Carr from The Ohio State University is our data evaluation and statistical analyst. This is not only providing us the evaluation service, but it is also part of our program to elevate early career researchers. So we're very proud of that, and we're very proud to have Tyler on the program. So like I say, it is a meaningful evaluation. As we look at the number of cultivars that have qualified over time, we see that it's really a small percentage of the cultivars that go to the actual commercial end. Most cultivars that come through our trialing process, for whatever reason, do not end up becoming commercially available. Part of that is going to be yield, part of that is going to be marketability, whatever it is. But it is actually a very limited number of the 40% of our overall approval that comes to the market. So it is a small part of the market share. But it is a measurable part. We've had about 40 million pounds of TWCA qualified turf entering into the market since 2020. That sets up projected water savings of 238,000 acre feet, which is significant if we're able to capture that. To help us capture that and to help us help consumers be more effective stewards of their managed environment, we have programs like the turf trade that we worked on with Kelly. Now, Kelly helped us to produce, and Salt Lake City helped us to produce the educational videos to help consumers establish their lawn and maintain it appropriately. The turf trade program that we collaborated on has already replaced 4.5 million square feet in the state of Utah. That is since 2021. It sets up 86 acre feet of annual savings potential. It is supported by local vendors, so it is driving the local economy. And it has incredible participant support, again, from the Center for Water Efficient Landscaping and from our government partners, both in Salt Lake City and then in Provo. One of the real gifts of this program for me, though, is the acre feet and the square feet of conversion that I'm not able to quantify, because there were pop-up programs that were using TWCA qualification as a requirement for their participation, but were not directly involved with us. And so we had a significant multiplier effect just from having programs in the state. Another example of how we are able to get people to recognize, oh, that arrow is going to the wrong place. Oops, I'm sorry about that. Another way that we're working to advocate for this drought-tolerant turf grass, and another way that we're working with our partners is through a rebate program. So in the city of Okotoks, Alberta, there is a 50% rebate program for TWCA qualified turf specifically. Now, what we see is in 2023, there was a 3-to-1 participation ratio for turf grass participants versus turf alternatives, which is the turf removal and conversion program. So the turf replacement program is really a small part of their overall rebate program, but it tracks overall with what it should be. Excuse me, I'm a bit parched this afternoon. Another partnership that we're very excited about and that we've only really started to work on is a Better Lawns partnership through our Twin Cities Seed, one of our industry members in Minnesota, and the Nokomis East Neighborhood Association. They promoted a Better Lawns mix, which is TWCA qualified. Nokomis sponsored it to the tune of, I want to say it was a 50% or a 45% discount on the product with Twin Cities Seed. They converted 22 households We're setting up about 1,200 cubic feet, 1,200 units of saving potential, which in the Nokomis East neighborhood is about $6,000 in consumer water savings. So that's, across all of those 62 households. As we progress with this project, what we'd like to do is be able to partner with them and start to monitor their water use. Now, that is one of the unique things that we're able to do with Salt Lake City and Provo, is be able to look and see their water use over time. And Kelly, just for reference, the Concord lift station, when I look at some of the initial data, the back of the envelope calculations say that there's about a 66% reduction in water use post-conversion versus pre-conversion. So that is a significant change, and that is I think a really positive indicator.
And so, Jack, you were able to get 66% reduction at that one project just by changing the varietal of the turf?
Well, so it is through the landscape conversion that took place, which did not eliminate 66 or 65% of the landscape. It really only converted a small portion of it. But yeah, the change in water use since that conversion and the updates has been 66%. So
Cool.
yeah, I think so. As we've talked a lot here, one of the main things that is going to make this successful is consumer education. Really, the way we started to come to that was through a project where we donated playing fields to the Title I school, Walker Elementary in Southern Oregon. We worked with the city to donate them and monitor the water, but we did not do any of the management. Instead, we turned that over to the school district, and the only guidance we gave them was water it as you see fit. And with that limited guidance, we saw a 12% reduction in water use on those fields. On a personal feel-good note, those are now the nicest fields in the school district. And the city was able to use that conversion to get grants to update both the backstops and the dugouts. So I don't want to pat myself on the back too hard, but it makes me feel really good about it. And to help professionals, we are working with organizations to not only build out manuals, but also to build out water budgeting tools, because that is one of the biggest things people can do. And so we do have some WHELO compliant tools available for our partners. And that is kind of where we are in a wheelhouse. We'll probably do questions at the end. So this one is all done. Rob, buddy, you're muted.
I was saying a lot of really nice things about Matt and his work at Scott's Miracle Grow as the director of biotechnology. And
yeah, we'll never hear it, right?
I don't know if I can do it twice. So, Matt, you guys are working on a lot of the different kinds of seeds, different kinds of varietals that are helping Jack in his analysis. And so, can you walk us through a little bit about how that works? And then, for the folks that are on the call too, is grass the only option, or how do you see the sort of future landscape in California communities?
Yeah. So let me introduce myself first, and then happy to dive in and give a industry perspective on this topic. But like you said, Matthew Koch, Director of Biotechnology and Genetics at Scott's Miracle Grow, headquartered here in Marysville, Ohio, so East Coast, so a little late in the day here, but no worries. So genetics, you hear that in my title. I think what's really cool here is, I think the other two panelists would agree, genetics is really a massive lever to pull in this conversation, and really kind of proud to be representing that for our company. Been with the company for about 13 years, technical roles, managerial roles. My background, hold a PhD in plant science from Rutgers University. So East Coast boy at heart, born and raised in New Jersey, but specialize in turfgrass variety development, so plant breeding and genetics at the university there. Made my way out to Scots in 2012. I guess technically I'm still at my first job out of grad school all these years later. I guess not technically true. I guess my first job was mowing lawns. I guess I was always a grass guy at heart. But really pleased to be here, give the industry perspective on this, especially from the industry leader in this space of consumer lawns and gardens and other green spaces. This topic of water actually speaks to my former life as a grad student as well, beyond my current role. Kicked off a large work stream while in grad school, developing turfgrass varieties for use where you were using non-potable water as your irrigation source. So typically these are higher in salt content. So we're evaluating, being a turf breeder. Here we are creating new varieties for the next generation that had sustainability at heart, where you were choosing individuals that were subjected to the highest salt concentrations, breeding them together and creating these new varieties that were then able to reduce the use of actual drinking water. So really been doing this water thing for a bit of time here. But here at Scott's, we take water conservation seriously across all of our businesses. And I guess when you go around our campus, there's always these corporate mantras, and a few of them resonate, I think, really heavily with this conversation. The first is something we live by, is especially in R&D, in research and development, is find a need and fill it. And we as a company, an industry leader in the space, are always looking for ways of innovating on what we do and what we do best. And I think this comes from a really close understanding of our consumer and their feelings and their pain points, and really using that to help us drive our thinking and our innovation strategies. Once the needs are identified, it's our job as R&D to really innovate and bring those products to market that are innovative. Another saying at Scott's, and I really like this one, is our goal is to provide our customers with products and knowledge and support that allow them to express themselves on their piece of the earth. And I think what that really boils down to is we want our customers to get out there and enjoy their green spaces, and providing them with the education, the tools, the products to do that in a manner that suits them. And every customer, every consumer will be different. So providing them with a range of options, I think, is really the way we tackle that. So with the changing times, I mean, your preamble is exactly right. The times are changing. The environment, the consumer, the sentiment, the emotions around this are changing. And it's important that we as a company bring relevant products to market, even if they're not steeped in our traditional 150-year-old history of what we call a lawn. So bringing innovations, these new innovations to fruition is a key component of our success over the decades, and it's been our ability to communicate and educate our customers that we've really leveraged as we're bringing this novelty to the market. So I like to consider myself a bit of a Scott's history buff. Again, I just said we're over 150-year-old company. I like to wear it as a badge of honor. I think that's a bit of pop culture in a way, old Americana. So really kind of cool there. But what's really fascinating, as you collect and look at some of the old advertising, what's been consistent amongst our history as a company is providing tons of information. There's lots of words in our old advertising, and it really was about providing the information necessary to achieve success and use products appropriately. That was really at the forefront of what we do best. And the ability to reach our customer and provide that education is really at the forefront of how we develop new products, especially with an emerging trend like happening in the marketplace, as these products are just not the same. They do require a different touch and require that education, but we have we have the customer's ear in that way, and we've always had that ear. So providing that education is what we do, what we hold core. So we at Scott's are changing the way we think about lawns, really opening the aperture and pushing the sustainability envelope through development of new products with drought and water use in mind, and using grass varieties with proven track records of internal and third-party validation uh, as, as varieties in our products. And these are varieties that have gone through the validation process and have shown to greatly reduce needed irrigation. So our grandfather's lawn, even our dad's lawn, it's not the lawn of today, and it's really not the lawn of tomorrow either. Variety development, a lot of credit I think needs to go to turfgrass breeders for pushing sustainability at the forefront of their variety development efforts, and I think that's really come to fruition now, where you see, I think significant time and funding has continued to pour into this space, and creating these varieties is real. These are real benefits under reduced inputs, especially when it comes to water and fertilizer. So these new varieties offer significant improvements over older varieties, and I think that's why it's important that we not demonize lawns by painting with a broad brush. Not all varieties, and you've heard this already, so not to beat a dead horse, but I think it's important and probably worth saying, but not all varieties are created equal, and not all varieties within a species are going to behave the same way under every condition. So this testing and validation is very important. I think the testing, and Jack would, I think, could speak to this, is really shown wild variation within species. So I think not only does that give us an opportunity to select, but I think what that also shows is these are very valuable breeding targets for turfgrass breeders as they continue to develop and move varieties towards being more and more sustainable. So the change that's occurring in the space is a great example of our ability to innovate and communicate with our customers. Another way that we're challenging established paradigms is with alternatives. You mentioned, maybe opening the aperture of what is a lawn, what is a turf grass even, and I think one of the ways we're doing that is looking at alternatives to your traditional grass species here at Scott's. And I think our clover product is a great example of a alternative that you can achieve awesome benefits from. And specifically, the one that we use in our clover product has shown so again, genetics, red strawberry clover showing drastically better drought tolerance compared to white Dutch clover. So even in an alternative, we're being very thoughtful about the genetics that are going into our products. So other grasses, all other alternatives, just to be complete, that we're looking at is things like dichondra in the south, traditionally a weed, but makes a really fascinating ground cover. So really cool. Buffalo grass, if you've heard of that, an awesome native grass that is I think ripe for variety development, and really I think is an interesting one as we're opening the aperture of what is a lawn species. So I guess just to wrap up, as Kelly said, benefits of lawns, there's so many. And as an industry leader in the space, we're taking development of next generation sustainable products and consumer and customer education very seriously. As you heard, it's important for us to continue to communicate the benefits of green spaces. There are lots of them. Again, Kelly just went through them all, but so I think it's important that as a turfgrass community, we continue to beat that drum of all the benefits that come along with these green spaces, with lawns and gardens. And we have a responsibility as the industry leader to help beat that drum. I think the way to think about it, there's absolutely a need for these living green spaces. And really, I think it'd be short-sighted and a shame to discount something that's providing such environmental, social, and recreational benefits to end users.
Thanks, Matt. So folks, I think we're happy to take questions. You could put questions in the Q&A, or if you want to use the raise hand feature, I can unmute you. And while we're anticipating those, I'll start off. Kelly, can you talk about how the turf trade thing started in Salt Lake City, and was there involvement from the local government? How did you guys get that ball rolling?
Yeah, well, I think even before we started working with Salt Lake City, we had the pleasure of working with TWCA for many years, and we had been conducting trials for a while, and it was just terrific information. And every single day I could see the differences of what we were trialing. So, with that as a background, I've been here in Utah for many years, and I've been working with the water conservation manager of Salt Lake City almost that entire time. And so she and I would have just incidental conversations about what was going on with our research. I mentioned to her several times that we had this fantastic trialing program going on, and the results were remarkable. And then, as I said during my presentation, just like California, we've really kind of come up against a wall here in Utah in terms of water supplies, what we're dealing with in terms of changing temperatures and weather variability. And so Salt Lake City was looking at real reductions in water availability and needing to cut down outdoor water applications by at least 50% and more if they could get it. And now at the same time, this water conservation manager, Stephanie Dewar is her name, recognize that, like Matt was saying, we need to recognize the importance of green spaces in our lives for recreation, for social activities, psychological activities. I mean, that's something that's not brought up very often too, but it's huge. And so she had always had what I would call a more balanced view of things. And so when they hit that wall and needed to really look at conserving water, they wanted to take a comprehensive approach, and they understood that most people want to be able to keep their lawns, but most people also want to do the right thing. And so she came to me with that charge. I immediately thought TWCA certified products are where we need to go. The three of us got together for various meetings, and it didn't take very long before this program was born. If she were on this webinar, she would say it is a program, not a product. And I love all of the conversation we've had about education, all of the work that Scott's does, all of the work that TWCA does, all of the things that we do as an institution. I cannot overemphasize how important that has been to the success of the program. So Jack mentioned the videos we created. We created a series of 5 short videos guiding folks through the process with great detail so that they can be successful. Because I don't anticipate somebody taking this seed without any education and being successful. They need a little support in that. And so that's how the program was born. Jack could tell us how many times they've sold out, but it's a lot of times, 4.5 million square feet, I think. That's a lot of seed, and it just continues to sell out each time more arrives. But, again, the market has transformed here, and that's also been really, really remarkable and really encouraging.
Well, we have a question that might be about a specific lawn, but Len in our room says he lives in San Diego and has turf that does well in the winter and spring, but today is 90% dormant. What are the options to overseed and give him a better looking yard all year long?
Who wants to take that?
What do you think, Kelly?
Sounds like Jack was starting off there. Jack, did you want to talk? Okay.
No, I was about to say, you're the turf scientist. Between you and Matthew, I think you were the obvious two sides of that coin.
We might be able
Okay.
to chair too.
Well, let's see. I'll start. Maybe Matt, you can chime in. So Lynn, it sounds to me like you are growing a cool season turf grass there. And there are many of those, by the way. I would have no way of knowing what species or variety based on the question, but it does sound like you're growing a cool season grass. And I guess my thought is it may be dormant right now, but is that really the worst thing? Cool season grasses, they are genetically programmed, and here's where Matt comes in, genetically programmed to enter dormancy when they're under stress. And it is not death, by the way. And that's something that I often say. Turf grass dormancy is not death. It is an absolutely normal biological process by which the grass plant protects the major growing points of the plant, which sit right at the soil surface, but sacrifices the leaves because it's either too hot or there's not enough moisture, whatever the case may be. So totally normal. Also totally normal that it would recover in the spring and fall and look great for you in the winter there in your climate. So, to me, I jokingly call myself a lazy gardener, maybe half jokingly. And to me, it sounds like it's doing what it's supposed to do in your climate. Now, on the other hand, if you were looking to reduce overall water use, you could consider transitioning to some of these lower water use varieties. But as a general recommendation, what you have is doing what it's supposed to do. And so you need to just decide if that's okay with you or maybe not so okay with you. So maybe Matt has some more to add to that.
I actually love that recommendation. I think that's exactly part of, as we've said numerous times, the education piece that goes along with grass is opening opening our definition of what's acceptable. What's an acceptable lawn? I think it's our challenge as a turf grass community. It's our challenge to teach the consumer that an acceptable lawn is exactly that. And in fact, what you described, this going dormant, it is actually a strengthening process for grasses. It actually helps harden them off to take on further stress. So that is a phenomenal recommendation of just being okay with a dormant lawn. That is that's a great recommendation.
That's what I tell my neighbors.
And so what are the options if an agency wanted to promote people having better access, like a turf trade kind of program? What are the mechanics of that? How do folks get more information? What are the options available?
Well, that's me, I assume. It is very easy. You can reach out to us. You can reach out to me directly. I think my email will be available. It's jack.carlin@tgwca.org. I can put it in the chat. And that will be a way for us to initiate a partnership. Alternately, if you want to take this on yourself and you say, you know what, I don't want to bring anybody else into this. This is something that we can handle internally. You can go to our website, tgwca.org, and look for members in your area. We have a searchable map where you will be able to find industry members or producer members in your area who will be able to supply you with TWCA qualified materials that meet your needs. If you want to, and I strongly recommend developing educational materials specific for your program or your region or even your state, then I would strongly recommend reaching out to your land grant universities, your extension, because your state extension is going to know your conditions. That is your smartest turf reference in your state, generally.
Okay. Well, any other questions from our attendees? Anything else we should have talked about, panelists?
There were two things when Matt was talking, and I got a little overeager. I think you saw me like a nervous little dog there. There were two things I wanted to point out. One of them was about the breeders and the debt that we owe to the turf grass breeders. The program breeding a new turf grass optimistically is a 7-year process. Realistically, it's closer to 20. And so it is a time-consuming and incredibly expensive proposition to develop new cultivars and to keep that genetic train running. The other side of that coin is the minute you stop supporting that work, you lose that entire genetic pool. And so any gains that have been made there then are lost to the market. So it is an incredible debt that we owe to the industry for doing that. You know, the other side of that is as TWCA qualifies cultivars, and not all cultivars do get qualified, even those that do not qualify demonstrate elevated drought tolerance relative to conventional drought susceptible cultivars. And so what we see is even if not everything is getting qualified, the industry is pushing slowly upward on the genetic material that is available in the market, regardless of whether or not it carries a TWCA qualification. So that is an interesting pull-through fact. So fun times.
We did have one other question. They're asking, is there a report or document with a list of turf species that are recommended?
Ooh, yes, there is. So at the end of our trialing process on our website, we publish our qualification recommendations. So you will be able to see the qualification recommendation from the 2018 Kentucky Bluegrass trial, the 2020 Tall Fescue trial, and then as the new perennial ryegrass trial that we're putting out this fall goes out, you will also be able to start to see information there. So yes, if you are just looking for a list of qualified cultivars, you can go to our website and it will be there in qualified materials. It's pretty easy to follow. And again, if there are any questions, any concerns, I know a guy who loves answering questions and assuaging concerns. So please reach out to me.
Yes, and Jack's email and the TGWCA website links are in the chat.
With that, I see no other open questions. We could give folks a few minutes of their afternoon back with many thanks to Dr. Kopp, to Mr. Coach, and to Jack, Mr. Carlin for their insights into this. Really, I think, pretty interesting issue and heartened to learn I don't have to give up my lawn. But with that, we'll conclude. There will be a recording of this presentation available on the California City News, California County News websites, as well as the presentations and so forth. And thanks to all of you who took some time out of your day to join us. Thanks again.
Thank
Thank
you,
you all.
everyone.
Cheers.